I'd like to welcome and thank all of you for joining us on our webinar for today. My name is Val Adriano. I am a solution architect with IM Team. Before we go on with the webinar, I'd like to just give a background about IM Team. So we are a professional services company based out of Calgary, Alberta in Canada. And we've been providing identity and access management related services to different organizations within North America for the past 20 years. And pretty much our core services is around the identity and access management space. If you'd like to know more about our services that we offer, feel free to email us at info@imteam.com or visit our website at imteam.com. And we would love to hear from you. So the title of our webinar for today is Rolling the Kings of Keys, Managing Privileged Accounts. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are aware that privileged access or privileged accounts, these accounts play an essential part in keeping our IT systems operational. You know, whether we are installing new applications, applying fixed packs, or performing backup. These activities typically require the use of a privileged account. And because of the power and access level entrusted onto these privileged accounts, you know, organizations, they need to be able to enforce accountability and prevent any type of misuse or abuse of these accounts. So our speaker today will give us insights and information on how we can control and monitor these privileged accounts in our environment. And during the presentation, if you have any questions that you want to ask the speaker, just type them out in the questions panel on the GoToMeeting application in your screen. And so, you know, without any more delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Jomar Jovellanos. Jomar is a senior architect with IM Team. He has more than 15 years of experience in IT security, and he holds certifications in information security management and auditing. So, Jomar, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Brahal. I would also like to thank everybody for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend this webinar. We hope that you can get some insights in dealing with probably one of the most serious issues in your organization. So here's the outline of what we will be discussing today. First, I will describe who the kings of keys are and why they are called like that. All right. Next, I will identify the common pain points that are experienced in most organizations when it comes to privileged access. I will also discuss how this can be alleviated with the elements of controlling privileged access, much like controlling the kings of keys. And I will also show you how to roll these kings of keys from a technology standpoint. And if we still have time, we will try to answer your questions. Okay. Today, if not all of your if not all of your business information are being processed within your IT environment, right? Your IT environment, which we could say this is your kingdom of information. Setting up the environment and managing this information and running it on a day-to-day basis requires the use of credentials, right? And shall we say these credentials are called keys. You would have regular keys for regular users or regular employees, and you would also have very powerful keys that can open all doors to your kingdom of information. Um, these keys are then entrusted to your employees, who gets the responsibility of guarding your information. And these are privileged user or accounts, and because of the power this account hold, we call them kings of keys. In an ideal situation, there would be very few kings of keys, but in reality, let's accept it because of the diversity and complexity of our IT environment, the number of privileged accounts grows sometimes to an uncontrolled level. Well, with that said, what we have gathered from our previous engagements, the most common pain points in organization when it comes to privileged access are, uh, say, lack of accountability. I'm pretty sure that most organizations today still practice, sharing some administrative credentials among its trusted employees. The problem with that is, as an IT professional, right, it is very difficult to identify who used a shared account at any given time. Okay. Another pain is the use of hard-coded and embedded passwords. This happens when a developer creates or customizes an application, and an application requires a credential to access a database or a resource in your IT environment. And sometimes the only way to do it is to hard code the credentials in the application itself. So this becomes a great risk because an attacker can get hold of those credentials by just looking at the code itself or the code of the application. Okay, visibility of privileged accounts activities. Well, most of the time, as a systems administrator, you need to identify the events that happened in an activity to make sure that everything went well and there were no steps missed, right? Um, which can cause problems later on. So it is not enough to just look at the logs. Most of the times, you would wish that there's a video recording of these activities so that you can play it back later on for review or troubleshooting purposes. Unrestricted admin access. Okay, once a privileged user is used to log into the system, example of which is the administrator account logging into Windows Server or the root account logging into a Unix server, that user can do anything. I mean, it can modify any settings in that server consciously or unconsciously, which could later on may cause problems, right? And of course, auditability of privileged access. Server logs are usually not enough to comply with an audit to answer the question who did what and when. Especially for shared accounts, right? So considering these pain points, I would like to launch a survey wherein you can choose from the list which of the from the list that you feel are most challenging in your organization. So here's the poll. Okay, I would give say 10 seconds for everybody to answer. So if you could click on the ones that you feel are most challenging in your organization, and then we will see how many, what's the most challenging pain point in your organization. All right. There are about 17, uh, okay, 75% of the responders. All right. So there you go, 100%. Let me just close this poll. Okay, so from the poll, the major or royal pain point in the organization when it comes to privileged access seems to be the hard-coded privileged passwords. Okay, and this follows by the shared privilege accounts. So these are the two, most challenging, issues in the organization when it comes to privilege accounts. So let me close that poll. Well, shortly in this webinar, I will show you the cure of this, royal pains. Okay. In the meantime, let's look at the industry news today. A survey was conducted by IBM to IT executives, asking them what the top security threats are in their organization. So it turns out that the top security threat from their perspective is the threat that can be made by privileged insiders or insiders using privileged accounts. Example of this threat can be found in the news as well. Like in the case of Anthem, which happened just this year, 80 million customers were affected by just one compromised account. Another incident with Sony Pictures, which FBI is saying that it was North Korea who hacked them, but some investigators are saying evidences points to a group of employees or ex-employees with privileged access. Okay. Another case is from the city of San Francisco, where only one network administrator maintains all the administrative credentials in the network. And when he suspected that they will fire him, he held these administrative credentials out of the city's control. So he hostaged these credentials. Again, no organization without a privileged access management solution in place is 100% sure that its trusted employees or the kings of keys that you anoint to these employees will not be compromised. So how then can we control these kings of keys? How can we rule them per se? The three elements that you need to understand or that you would be using would be the use of technology, process, and governance. These three must work together to have an effective management system for privileged access. And of course, this will give you the controls that you need to control your business. Okay, digging into these elements deeper from a technology standpoint, the privileged access management tool should be deployed with these basic features. Okay, uh, password vaulting with automated reset. So make sure that the tool can reset the password of the privileged accounts, especially shared credentials, to avoid unauthorized use. So it's not like just saving the password to your password vault, and that tool cannot reset the password. So the one who saved it can still know the password. To establish individual accountability, an audit trail of all password requests for shared privilege accounts must be there and cannot be tampered with. The tool must also be customizable enough to follow the processes that you have established via simple workflows. Okay, and of course, it must have the capability to replace hard-coded and embedded passwords in applications through the use of APIs. So these features alone can already address the top issues that you've identified earlier, which is hard-coded privileged passwords and shared privilege accounts. Okay, it must also have the capability to record activities when a privilege session is established with uh, target systems, and must be able to play it back for review and audit purposes. And it should have the capability to control commands that can be executed by privileged users while connected in the session for an effective control to ensure segregation of duties. So in terms of uh, process and governance perspectives, policies and standards for privileged access must be created in your organization as well, so that you are mandated to implement controls. Example statements can be there must be no shared administrative account and password that is known by multiple users at any given time. or a privileged access must be used only for the period when it was authorized, much like of a timed access for privileged accounts. Now, to comply with these policies and standards, there must be processes in place that will serve as guides, and an access request and approval process must be established, which can be integrated with existing processes in chains, incident, and problem management. So there must also be reviews of privileged account sessions, especially every time a critical change was done. The reviews can be a part of the lessons learned session or post-review sessions after a change. Okay. A periodic recertification or access reviews or revalidation must also be in place, to ensure only authorized individuals can use privileged accounts. And it is also a good idea to form a group that will be responsible in managing privileged access in your organization. Okay? Now, we can say that ruling the kings of keys is indeed very challenging for organization when it comes to enforcing security policies and meticulously following processes without the aid of technology. So technology provides automation, which also ensures compliance to processes and regulations. Now, I will show you how to rule the kings of keys from a technology standpoint, which of course should work hand in hand with the process and governance perspectives that we've discussed earlier. So the tool that I'm going to show you is called TPAM, or the Privilege Appliance and Modules from Dell Software. Well, it was previously called Total Privilege Access Management when it was still with Quest, but then Dell bought Quest, so they rebranded it, but it's still TPAM, right? TPAM is a hardened appliance which has 4 modules, and one of the main module is PPM, or Privileged Password Manager, which has the basic features of password vaulting, among others. This module also comes with APM, or Application Password Manager. This module provides a platform to avoid hard-coded or embedded credentials in applications. Okay, another main module in TPAM is the PSM, or Privileged Session Manager, which enables session recording and playback. It's more like of a canned session when a privileged user accesses a system through direct connections like remote desktop protocol for Windows, um, secure shell for Linux systems, or SQL Plus for Oracle databases or other protocols used to connect to a target system, which can be played back later on by reviewers, auditors, or system administrators. Okay, PSM comes with PCM, or Privileged Command Manager, that can give more restrictions to privileged access. So as we all know, usually when an admin user is logged in to say through RDP in a Windows system, the privileged user being used has no restrictions, right? And that user can execute anything in that server. And with this module, we will show you later on how to address this unrestricted admin access. So this solution can actually be deployed in a clustered manner for high availability, and in a distributed architecture for more efficient operations. All right. To demonstrate password vaulting, here is a use case wherein, let's say, Alice Nixon is a systems administrator, and she needs to access a system using a shared privilege account called shared account 1. Okay. The PAM solution will ensure accountability that only an authorized individual can use the shared account at any given time. So to ensure that Alice is authorized, she has to get approval from her manager or the approver of the account. In this case, the approver is Charlie Cloud. So there will be about 6 steps in this process. First is that Alice will log into the PAM tool and file a request to get the password of shared account 1. Number 2 is that the PAM tool will notify the approver. And number 3, the approver will log into TPAM to approve the request. And then the PAM tool will reset the password automatically of the shared account in the target system. Okay. And the PAM tool will show the password to Alice. And then number 6 would be Alice logging in to the target server with the new password. Okay. Now let's go over it in my lab to understand it better. I have here, Alice opened, her web browser, and she's already logged in to TPAM. So once logged in, she will be presented with the options that she is authorized to do. Like, for example, she is authorized to, add a password request or a file request. Okay. The file request option is intended for requesting private or public keys or certificates that you need to access a certain resource. So it's like a complement to your public key infrastructure. Okay. But let's not focus on this option. Now, let's say Alice is tasked to do a configuration change in a shared privilege using a shared privilege account. So here she would need the password to use that account. So let's go ahead and click on add password request. Okay. Clicking that would provide her the option to filter privileged accounts that she wants to use, either by system name or account name. But clicking the accounts tab would list all the available accounts that she is authorized to use. So you would also notice that in the minimum approver column, you would see how many required approvals are needed to grant the request. And on the details tab, it displays the status of the account, whether it is being used by another person or it is available for request. Okay, so you might notice that the account shared admin 1, the third one, is already in use, so Alice will not be able to request this until the request is automatically expired or the user who requested it manually expires it. Now, let's say the accounts that are listed here, you would also notice that there's a zero approver here on this account. So this account is actually a pre-approved account, and it's a firewall account which can be used for emergency purposes and in responding to incidents, right? So it doesn't need approval, but whenever you use this account, it will be logged by TPAM. Okay, so in this demonstration, let's go ahead and select the available account that requires approval, and this account is the shared account 1. So click on the details tab. Well, select the account, and then Alice would click on the details tab. Here she can request it at a later time or have the password released immediately after approval. Okay. She would also need to select the reason code as to why she needs access to this account. So let's say change management, and she can provide more details to this request for the approver to understand why she is requesting this. So let's say change in production, okay, production server. She can also provide, a ticket number for the change here. Let's say CM00035. So that's the ticket number. And then TPAM can be, set up in such a way that you are required to provide a ticket number, and TPAM can verify it with your ticketing system if this is a valid ticket number or not. So once all the details are provided, notice that the Save Changes button is activated. So Alice can then, save the request, and that will trigger an email to notify the approver that there's a request for to release a password for a shared account. So, okay. Now let's switch over to the approver's view. In this case, it's Charlie. So Charlie would receive an email notification. So here's an example of the email notification. Okay, and it would, detail out the request, like the account that is being requested, the system that Alice wants to access, and the requester. Okay, and if Charlie would click on this link, the link that is provided in the email, he will be redirected directly to the request itself. Okay, so notice that the approve and deny request at the bottom left corner is still grayed out. That's because Charlie needs to fill out all the required fields before these buttons are activated. So let's say he wants to approve the request and just entered OK in the response field. Now the buttons are now activated, so he can approve the request. So he clicks on the approve the request, and that would also send an email notification to Alice, notifying her that her request has been approved. Okay. Now let's switch back to the view of Alice. So here is Alice logged in TPAM. So while she is still logged in, she can click on the detail. Well, you would notice that the password tab here is still grayed out. So it's not. This means that the request has not been approved yet. But while Alice is logged in to this to this view, she can actually click on the details tab to refresh the to refresh the the request, and notice that the password tab is now enabled, right? So if she clicks on that, she would be able to retrieve the password of the account that she requested. Okay, so there is also a countdown to close the window here. This control is provided to minimize the risk of somebody snooping over your shoulder and memorizing the password, right? So once the counter is timed out, it will bring you back to the details tab. But let's say Alice wants to access the server with this password. So let's copy that in the clipboard, and now Alice would need to launch the remote desktop connection to the server. Okay, and she is using the shared account one privilege account, and we've copied the password, right? So we can just paste it here, and that should allow her to log into the target server with a new password. Okay. All right. So let's say Alice is done with her activities, right? So she can log off from the target system, and then she needs to go back to TPAM, right, to manually expire her request. So let's say I'm done with the change, So with that, she can go ahead and click on the Save Changes, all right, to check in the privilege account. So that would actually, make TPAM again to reset the password in the target server. So once the shared account is checked in, okay, TPAM will reset the password in the target server. So let's say Alice tries to connect to the server again with the same password, right, through remote desktop, right. So remember the password is copied over to the clipboard. So let's try pasting it again. And all right, so Alice would not be allowed to log in to the target server because TPAM already changed the password. So in this case, you would ensure that only the authorized individual will be able to access the will be able to use the privileged account and will be able to access the server at any given time. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our deck here. All right, so this is the use case for password vaulting. Now let's move on to the other use case, which is the session recording. Uh, so here's another use case where a system administrator by the name of Bob Jones, he would need access to a Windows server using the account admin, all right, to perform a task that is approved to change, well, that is approved, and he needs to change it in the production environment. So this time, a reviewer by the name of Dan David is required to review the change or review the activities after Bob is done with it. And as per process, again, it has to be approved by an approver who is still Charlie Cloud. Okay, so there will be about 10 steps in this process. So let's say Bob Jones will need to log into TPAM to file a session request, and then the PAM tool will notify the approver, right? And then the approver would need to log into TPAM to approve the request. And then number 4, the PAM tool will reset the password to the target system. 5 would be Bob launching the session in the PAM tool. And 6, in the background, the PAM tool opens up the session. And 7 would be, the session is connected to the target system, and recording is started. And uh, number 8 would open up a window in Bob, where he can perform the activities that he requested. So, for example, he requested a remote desktop to a Windows box, so we will be presented with an RDP session. If he requested for a secure shell to a Linux box, he will be presented with a secure shell session. All right. After the activities, and then Bob would manually expire the request or log off to the server or close the session. The PAM notifies the approver. So an email notification will also be sent out to the reviewer, notifying the reviewer that there's a session, okay, that needs his review. Okay, and number 10, the reviewer will then need to log into TPAM and play back the session to review the activities done by the requester. Okay, now let's go back to my lab again. Um, so I'm still logged in as Alice Nixon. So the requester this time is Bob Jones, right? So I need to log out and log in again using Bob's credential, Bob Jones. Okay. All right. So once logged in, he will be presented again with the options that he's authorized to do. So he's authorized to add a password request, a file request, and there's an additional option here that says add a session request. Okay. So let's click on add session request, and that would present Bob again with the option to create filters. But let's just go ahead and click on the accounts tab. Same thing, all of the accounts and the systems that he is authorized to access are displayed, right? Um, Here he can select the target system and the account that he wants to use. For example, he wants to use the admin account to log into the IAM lab.local system. So he could select on that. Okay, click on the details. Again, provide a reason code, right? Let's say change management, and more details of the request for the approver to understand it. So change in production per ticket, approved ticket. Okay. Same thing, he can provide the ticket number here. Example, ticket number is CM00050. All right. And then once all the required details are provided, he can then go ahead and click Save Changes, and that would submit the request. Okay. Uh, Again, I would like to emphasize that there's also there's a connect button here at the bottom, wherein it is still grayed out because the request has not been approved yet. So let's switch back to the Charlie's view to approve the request. Okay. Um, so actually, there should be an email sent to Charlie saying that there's a request for a session made by Bob, um, but it hasn't arrived yet. So let's just go ahead and click on the home tab of Charlie's view here, list down the approvals needed. So here you would see a request coming in from Bob Jones, right? So if you click on that, okay, so it will display all the details of the request, the ticket number, okay, the requester, and of course I would Charlie would need to provide a response to Bob on the request. So let's say the response is approved, and Charlie approves the request. Okay. Now, once Charlie approves the request, again, the PAM tool will send an email notification to Bob saying that his request has been approved. All right. Now, switching back to Bob's view, notice that the connect button is still grayed out. But if Bob refreshes the request by just clicking on the details tab, that would activate the button. So in the case of session request, TPAM will not actually release the password, but instead it will provide a session for the requester to connect to the target system. So in Bob's view, he will be using this account admin to log into this target system IAMlab.local without knowing the password. Okay, so he can just go ahead and adjust the resolution and simply click on the connect button, and that will launch a separate window, okay, connecting to the target server. So there you go. Now in this window you would see that Bob is connected as an admin, okay. If you are connected as an administrator, right, in a server, in a Windows server, usually there are no restrictions, and you can do anything. So you can as an administrator you can change settings, you can execute all applications that are installed in the server, um, or you can do anything, practically anything that you want in the server. But with the additional control, just like I said earlier, there's an additional control provided by the PCM module, wherein you have the power to restrict critical applications to administrators. For example, as a server admin, you can start services, change system settings, but your policy might say if you are not a database admin, you should not be able to execute or access any database tools in the server. So here, as an example, there's an application installed for database admins, right? It's the Toad for MySQL, all right? And usually, if you are an admin, you can execute this. But with the use of TPAM, okay, since this is a database tool, and as per your policy, you are not allowed, even if you are an administrator, and if you are not a database admin, you should not be able to access this tool. So let's try to let's try to click on that. So let's say Bob is not authorized to use this. So if he clicks on that, okay, so that should display a pop-up saying that it was terminated because of the policy, and that action is, or attempt to open it, has been logged. Okay. So another example of this control is let's think of the notepad application as a critical application, and as per policy, it can only be accessed by an authorized individual, but not not an administrator, for example. So here, when Bob tries to open the application that he's not authorized again, yeah, an example is the notepad. Click on that, all right, and that should um, display a pop-up again showing that the process has been terminated, and that this action has been logged. So all restrictions can be set up using the privilege command module, and all of those activities will actually be logged, right, and notify the appropriate individual, or the owner of this application, for example. So okay, now let's say Bob is done with the activities, right? Say he can now log off from the server because he's done with his activities. Okay, log off on the server, close the session, and then go back to TPAM to manually expire the session. Now notice here that the connect button is still activated. That's because he requested it for say 2 hours, and if the 2 hours time is not has not lapsed yet, he can still connect to the server. But if he wants to manually check in the session, he can just go ahead and say done with the change, and save the changes. Okay. Now After saving the changes or checking in the session, that would actually trigger an email to the reviewer notifying the reviewer that he can go ahead and review the session performed by Bob. So let's say let's switch to the view of the reviewer. In this case, it's Dan David, right? So you should be receiving an email. Okay, the email is not yet here, probably delayed. But here's an example of the email notification. So say a session for account admin on system imlab.local was started by Bob Jones, and please use TPAM system to review the session. So actually, Dan can actually click on this link, and that would bring him to the reviews that he needs to perform. Okay. All right. So Dan can go ahead and click on the pending reviews. This is the session that was done by Bob. Click if he clicks on that. Okay, details of the session will be displayed. He can also view the responses, meaning who approved it or who have done who reviewed it already, and he can check on the reviewers who are the authorized reviewers for this session, and on the session logs window or session logs tab, that would list down the session that is recorded earlier. So he can view the file size and the duration of the session. Here, there's a 4-minute session done by, Bob Jones. So if Dan wants to play that back, click on the session and just click on the replay session. Again, that will, launch a separate window, okay, to play back the session done by Bob. So there's also a controls menu here where you can speed up the playback up to 16 times faster. So let's say 4 times faster. Let's speed it up for 4 times faster. And in the controls menu, there's also an option to view the metadata, wherein um, Don would be able to identify the commands or the applications that were executed during those times. Okay, so here Dan is able to see that Bob is trying to execute the Toad database tool, but he's not authorized to. Again, you can also add comments or add bookmarks here. Okay, but there you go. Again, Dan was able to see that Bob tried to access an application that is not authorized to, and then logs off from the session. Okay. All right. That actually, you know, um, um, plays back the session that Bob made. So as a reviewer, Dan can then go back to the details tab and provide his comments. So let's say the review comment is Bob tried to access 2 applications that he is not authorized to access, right? And then I can just go ahead and save my comment so that I can go back later on and do another playback, or I could just simply complete my review, and that would actually close the loop of the process. All right. Now let's go back to our slide here. So That actually concludes the session request approval and review process. Again, you can adapt these simple processes. These are built in with the tool to complement the governance and process sides of the solution. Okay. Now going back to the three fundamental elements of managing privileged accounts, you must have all three working together to get control of your business, and of course to rule the kings of keys per se. Remember that remember to implement a technology with all the right features, and make sure that these features can help you comply with the processes that you put in place. And again, you don't need to create a new process if you already have one in place, like change, problem, or incident management. You can just simply add the steps there needed for privileged access management. And from a governance perspective, this will actually ensure that your policies are enforced, your processes are followed, and audit requirements are complied with. Now, the next steps would be to act quickly before the security risks are exploited in your organization. You can go ahead and search for the right PAM solution in your organization. If necessary, request for a proof of concept, and review your current organization or current environment to determine which of the existing processes that you have can be improved or integrated with a privileged account management process. Check your policies and standards and make sure that it covers privileged access. All right. And of course, make sure that management and the business is with you 100%, to establish a successful privileged access management system. Now, having said all those things, um, we can go ahead to the Q&A, but before that, I would like to finally leave you with this mantra from a famous movie. All right, with great power comes great responsibility. The phrase actually speaks for itself. Privileged accounts are very powerful. They practically hold the keys to the kingdom, right? And essentially, whoever is managing these powerful accounts have the responsibility to rule them and keep them secured and operating efficiently within the boundaries of your kingdom of information. So moving on to the Q&A portion, I believe there were questions sent to us earlier. So I'm going to have my colleague read the questions. Rahel?
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jomar. So we do have some questions in the question panel here. Everybody on the webinar, feel free to type in your questions as well. I think we have a few minutes to answer a few of them. So first question, Jomar, we have is how long does it usually take to implement a PAM solution?
Okay. All right. So that's actually a tough question. Well, implementing a PAM solution in your organization actually depends on the size and complexity of your environment, right? A complete PAM solution should have policies and processes first. Now, before implementing a technology or a PAM tool. So ensure that your current policies and process covers privileged access management. If not, add some clauses to the existing ones that would cover it, right? But on the technology part, if you already have the policies and processes and governance controls in place, implementing a PAM tool could be as fast as 2 weeks, with just basic setup, or it could take years depending on the complexity of your environment. So this is actually a very big time frame, and it's really dependent on your IT environment.
All right. So next question, Jomar. I think this one is more on TPAM. Is there a limit on the number of sessions that you can record?
Okay, so Limit on the number of sessions? Well, the short answer is no. There's no limit as to how many sessions you can record in TPAM. But again, this actually depends on the environment because TPAM can send the recordings to an archive server with a say a decent storage, right? Example of which is for a 24-hour session, the file size of that session could go up from 10 to 30 megabytes, depending how busy it is. So, um, so there's actually a limit on how many simultaneous sessions it can hold. So, and this actually determines this is actually determined by the number of licenses for simultaneous sessions, and it could be if you need more technical information on this, you can send me an email and I can provide you more detailed description on how Dell licensing works in TPAM.
Okay. And I think we have time for one last question. What ticketing systems are supported?
Uh, well, almost all ticketing systems are supported by TPAM. Well, the ticketing systems that use a database can be supported, like BMC Remedy or HP Service Manager, because actually TPAM can interface directly to the database of those ticketing systems and read the ticket the ticket details, right? And actually you can set up different criterias wherein TPAM can verify that in the ticketing system, right? So with this criteria, you can actually modify your process and remove human intervention for approvals that are needed when requesting passwords or sessions. So this actually is a more efficient approach and can automate the approval process if you integrate it with your ticketing system.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jomar. And I think that's about all the time we have. There are no more questions in the queue. For everybody in the webinar, if you think of any other questions later on about the webinar, feel free to email them at info@imteam.com or directly to our speaker, jomar@imteam.com. And with that, I hope everybody got a good input from our webinar today, and maybe start thinking of how they are going to enforce or implement a PAM solution within their environment. Any last words, Jomar?
I think we're good. So I just wish everybody a good day. And if you have questions, again, my email is provided below, or you can visit our website, www.imteam.com. All right. Have a good day,
All right.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye.